this is Christina within the garden, and today we're going to take our green tomatoes that have now ripened and we're going to make salsa. This salsa recipe comes from my friend Bonnie, who I absolutely love. Bonnie passed in the last recent months, and this is a salsa mix that I'm going to make in her honor, and this is her recipe. So I'll go over it with you now. Okay, so for the recipe, you're going to need the following ingredients, and I'll link the recipe below in the context of this video. So for Bonnie's recipe, you're going to need 7 cups of tomatoes. You're going to need 2 cups of bell peppers, 1 cup of onions. You're needing 1 cup of jalapeno peppers or any pepper that you'd like. We'll have a few today. You're going to need 3 cloves of garlic or more if you like garlic like I do. You're going to need 12-ounce cans of tomato paste, and they do come in a smaller 6-ounce, so if you get the 6-ounce, make sure you get 2. You can get 1 for the 12-ounce tomato paste if you find it. Then you're going to need 1 cup of white vinegar and 1 1.5 tablespoons of salt. Then you're going to mix that into a large pot, bring it to a boil for 20 minutes until the mixture thickens, and then you're going to put it in your canning jars. And once it's in its canning jars, you're only going to need to water bath process these for canning if you're choosing to do that. And it's 30 minutes in the water bath. The water bath being a large pot of water that you put your mason jars or otherwise into. Now this makes 3.5 quarts of salsa. Now what I often do is I double that batch, so today you'll see me doubling our batch. So again, you're going to need tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, jalapenos, garlic, tomato paste, vinegar, and salt, and that's it. Now for a couple of tips. You're going to need a cutting board and a knife. I like this knife. It's my Kamikoto knife because as you're cutting, it's a really nice knife, and because it's a wide, broad knife, you can also scoop really easily. If you don't have one of these knives, you can use a vegetable gatherer. So you chop all your vegetables and you gather them together, and you can use that. This is what I'll be using. You're going to need a pan to put all of your tomatoes on. You can dunk your tomatoes in hot water to get the skins to release, but I'm going to try a method today that is putting them in the oven. And the reason I'm doing that is because some of my tomatoes have damaged parts that I'll be cutting off anyway. So if I put this into a water bath, it's going to make it very waterlogged. So I'm gonna opt for the tray option, and then I'm gonna use all of the juices from this to count as our liquid for the tomatoes. And then I have a compost bin. My compost bin is to put all my scraps in, and this is a small inside version, and then I empty this out into my compost out in my compost by my garden. So these are things that we grew. So these are the jalapenos we grew this year. These are all the tomatoes. All of these tomatoes were green 2 weeks ago, and they have all ripened inside. These are our onions, and I picked the onions that were going bad. I'll cut off the pieces that are going bad, or I grabbed the ones that were small. The reason I want to use those is because this is more like a all-together pot, so it's all going to cook together. It's not going to be seen, so you're not going to need perfect dicing or anything like that. Then these bell peppers we bought, this is a serrano. The ones we grew were jalapenos. So serrano's a little hotter. And this is a pasilla pepper, also known as the poblano pepper. And a dried version of that, if you can't find the green version, is this one. And this is the pasilla pepper, but you can also see them labeled as poblano. They go by both names. These are the cans of tomato paste. So this is 6 ounce, this is 12. You can get away with 1 of these per batch or 2 of these per batch, depending on which one you get. Just make sure you pay attention to 6 ounces versus 12. And then I have a distilled vinegar here. Now the part that we're doing now is we're going to cut these, like I said, removing any parts that we think are bad. We'll toss that into the compost, and then we'll set this here on the tray. And then what that's gonna do is that we're gonna heat it in the oven. I've already preheated my oven to 350. And that way we can put them all on the tray, heat it up, remove the skins, and then put them in the pot. 1 second. I'm not able to core with these. So if you get a tomato that's not damaged, go ahead and remove its core. The core really doesn't make for great salsa, so I'm just removing that, and then we're gonna place that down. Now, if you get one that has damage like this, you just cut it off. And then of course you're gonna core it. So this is all gonna be tomato prep, and then when I put the tomatoes in, I will prep all of the other ingredients. So we'll get through this part really fast. We'll get all the tomatoes on here, and then we'll move on. Now, tomato variety real quick before we go into hyper mode on this. These are the mortgage lifters that we took out of the garden. And then these were the, I think a lot of these are underdeveloped mortgage lifters. We had a pineapple one out there. I don't see that any of the pineapple ones are represented here. And then we had a black crim. And so I don't think this is the black crim. This one probably was. So a black crim kind of has like a coloring, like a darker coloring. So this one might have been a black crim, but all of these other ones, smaller ones, should all be versions of the mortgage lifter. Okay, let's get these cut up fast. Okay, this top was bad, so I cut it off, but as you can see, it's not good all the way through. So you could cut it in half, and again, see that it's not good all the way through. So those ones we're gonna toss, and that does happen sometimes when you bring tomatoes in to ripen. I'm gonna stop there. These larger ones will have lots of water in them. I don't want the pan to fill up with tomato juice with the amount of tomatoes we have. And so it's okay that it fills up with tomato juice, but overloading the pan with too many tomatoes won't allow for room for the tomato juice. I want to retain all the tomato juice I can. And I have a pretty good feeling that these are really moist and full of water tomatoes. I haven't had a successful year with the mortgage lifters, so I haven't used them before in cooking. So we're gonna save this, let's see, 6, 9 large tomatoes this size for the next batch. So let's get this batch in, and we will start prepping the rest of our veggies as those are heating up. So I'm not sure how much time you're actually gonna leave it in the onion, because in the past I've always blanched my tomatoes, and the way that you blanch them is that you have a pot of boiling hot water and you score the bottom actually, and then you pop it in there, and what happens is that it peels away, and when you pull it out you can peel it off easily. The whole point of putting them in the oven is to remove the skins. So in the meantime, let's get reset for the next prep. I do like to take the tomato seeds that fell out and dry them out, and then I save those for seed. Let me show you how I do that. So I just put them together, grab a paper towel, get them all on there, and then I just set it aside to dry. And I know we had a couple tomato samples here, but ultimately it's fine. It'll be what I like to grow again next year, so I'll set this aside. What's next is our onions. These are the onions we grew. This is the Spanish white. A couple of these are the Walla Walla, and then this bigger one is the Shutter one that we grew. Now, some of these have some damage, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and cut them, and any that aren't good, we will put in our compost bin. So this whole second half is not good, but this half is good. So I'm going to peel it and rinse it and then bring it back over here. So that's what we're gonna do next, is just chop all the onions. Don't worry about precise cuts because we're gonna cook this down. Also place your onions in a bag because then you can just use a measuring scoop and measure them out in, let's see, onions are cups at a time. And so by putting them in the Ziploc bag, you're actually gonna save yourself a lot of time and stress because then from here, you can scoop them out of the bag in cups pretty easy. Now this is more onions than we need, so if you do make more than you need, don't worry, you can throw it in the freezer and then you can save it for your next batch of salsa, which we did when we grew too many onions and bell peppers and jalapenos one year. Onions done. More than you need, so freeze it. Okay, a break between chopping. This is what you're looking for with the skin peeling. So we've got it there, it's there, there's one in the back. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. So far it's been in there for 20 minutes. That is the last bell pepper. Again, more ingredients than you need, but I usually make more than 3 to 4 batches when I do make it because I like having salsa. Okay, that is bell peppers. Now we're gonna need garlic cloves. These are already peeled. If you want to get your garlic peeled and you don't want to take a lot of time to do it by hand, pop them in a mason jar and then shake them up. Them beating up against the glass will take these fine little wrappers and loosen them. Now these are already the ones that I already took off, so we're gonna take the remaining ones off. And this is all good for your compost. So what I do is I dump it out and then I repack it back in there. That way it gets rid of the shells. Breaking them up helps sometimes. Okay, that did not get a lot off, so let's shake harder. I'm trying to be quiet because my baby is sleeping. I'm gonna go outside really quick and I'm gonna shake the thunder out of these. Be right back. Okay, there's a lot more of the wrappers off. Let's check on the tomatoes. Okay, we're looking for those splits in the tomatoes so they'll be easy to peel off. We'll set this here to cool. On to garlic. So the recipe calls for 3 cloves. This is 4 heads of garlic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it, and then the extra garlic I'm actually going to cover in oil for other recipes, especially with the holidays coming up. And Joe and I like to make breakfast in the morning. So the pre-cut onions, the pre-cut bell peppers, and the pre-cut garlic can be things we use in other recipes. But just for your reference, 3 cloves per batch. So if I'm making 3 batches today, I'll need 9 cloves. And so I will measure a clove in a teaspoon, which is a little more than you probably should, but I love garlic, so I don't mind. So let's get this cut. This will be more than enough garlic for our recipe. So I'm gonna put this in this little dish and set it aside. I'm planning on doing 3 batches. And then this can be our garlic oil. These are our wick jars. If you're looking for a good jar, wick is definitely a good one in addition to bell. Go like this. This batch we're going to mix in the poblanos, which again we've got 3 kinds, so poblanos, serranos, and jalapenos. I'm going to save these for the next batches. And as a reminder, I'm making 2 batches, but when I call it off as to the ingredients, I'll give you the ingredients based on one batch. Okay, to start we have 7 cups of tomatoes. If you're making 2 batches, that's 14 cups. Then the very next thing on the list, and we're going to use 1 cup measuring. We've got bell peppers. 1 batch calls for 2 cups. So you just fill it up, dump it in. Okay, if you're double batching, you go for 4. Okay, now next one is the onions. 1 cup. If you're double batching, 2 cups. Now, if you want to do a prep day and then a canning day, you should definitely do that. I've done it before, especially with bigger batches where we prepped everything the day before and then we canned everything. All right, so 2 cups of onions. Now, the recipe calls for jalapenos, but we've opted for serranos this time. And it wants 1 cup of whatever pepper you pick. So we're gonna do 2 for double batch. Okay. All right, it's barely got any left, so I'm gonna go ahead and dump it up. So that 2 serranos ends up being enough for a double batch. Okay, now garlic. I'm gonna go with about half of this, but the recipe calls for 3 cloves. Okay. Then we've got white vinegar. It's a half a cup for 1 batch or 1 cup for double batches. So we're gonna pour that in. This vinegar and the tomatoes are acidic, so that's what makes canning, water bathing possible. You always want acidity. Okay, and then tablespoon of salt, and I missed my tomato paste. Okay, so 1.5 teaspoons, so 3 for double batch. And this is that Malton's flaky salt, so if you get that one, it's not as salty, so you can add a little bit more. Okay, now these are our 12-ounce cans of tomato paste. 1 for 1 batch, 2 for 2. The tomato paste itself gives it a rich flavor, but it also thickens the salsa, that kind of like tomatoey, thick salsa that you usually see. It doesn't always come from the tomatoes itself, it comes from the tomato paste. All right. And then what I usually do is I push the tomato paste down toward the bottom and it'll start loosening up. You know, tomato paste is just a reduction of tomatoes, pureed tomatoes. Okay. Just disclaimer, I'm not a cook, by the way, or a chef. I am just a home gardener and I need something to do with my vegetables. So let's give this a little bit of a generous mixing. And then this is gonna go on the stove, it says for 20 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm heating water for our jars. The next steps go by pretty quickly. So you're just gonna give this a little bit of a mix, not much at all, because honestly, the heating of it will allow it to really mix together well. And I can already tell this is gonna be really good. I love it when the tomato is like chunky like that because it still breaks up in the heating process. And so that leaves some substance behind. The cooking part, we're gonna boil it or bring it to a boil for 20 minutes. And then from there, you want your hot liquid from your salsa to go into your jar and then into the water bath right away. So hot liquids in jars, you don't want them to cool down because you want it to go into the hot water right away. And that prevents, or it's helpful when you see jars that crack. You know, you wouldn't want a salsa jar to crack all over your water. You would have to start your water bath again. Some tools I have for myself for canning. Let me show them to you. So you're gonna need your jar. This is a smallmouth jar. And you're gonna need your lid and your ring. Now, once you water bath this, all you'll need is this lid. The ring actually comes off. And then I bought this on Amazon. It's a huge ladle with pouring spouts on either side. It's really nice to ladle it into the jar. So you put your little funnel and then you ladle it in and it's very little mess. And then what you do from there is you put your lid on, sorry, back up. You wipe your lid ring off, the glass ring, and that's when you want to double check you don't have any cracks or anything in your glass. So after you wipe it, then you put your lid on, then you put this ring on, and then from there, you lower this into your water bath, okay? So from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get our liquids onto the stove, and then you'll see me starting to can up in kind of a procedural manner here, where I usually just grab it, put it in a jar, and then put it in the water bath. Now you want to get all of your jars filled that you plan on putting in the water bath, and if you put let's say a tablespoon to 3 tablespoons of vinegar, it'll prevent the jar from getting foggy. Sometimes like hard water or water that has minerals in it will create like a foggy effect on your jar. If you put vinegar in the boiling water, that actually goes away. So from here, let's make salsa. The jars, you can put them in hot water like I do until they're ready to go, so that the jar itself is warm. So I've got 2 sinkfuls of warm water. This is our second batch out of the oven. And the darkening is the liquid that was on there before when we set it back in. So salsa making is like layered work. So while we've got our salsa in the pot, our water is boiling, our ingredients are waiting for the next batch, you can use this time to clean up or organize for dinner or whatever you'd like to do. From here, we're gonna fast forward all the steps to the end. So stay till the end and we'll go over anything that might have come up or questions that you might have along the way. I forgot about this pot that I got and I was looking at it. So it's one that goes on the stove. That's why it has this thick bottom. So let's go ahead and use this so we can multitask with our time. Okay. And then don't forget we have to measure this because we need to know how much volume we have. So it's going to go from the tray directly into this bowl for measuring purposes only. If you feel like eyeballing it, go ahead. Hot. Okay, remember we're going for 7 cups. If you see a skin, just grab it and pull it out. Okay, we're gonna pour our juice. Oh yeah, that's more than enough, so we're gonna go over here. Okay. All right, 2 batches. 2 double batches, so that's really 4 batches. Okay. All right, that's getting pretty full. All right, so we just carry on with our double batch. So we've got 7, like I said, 7 cups times 2 of the tomatoes. So now we need to go for our bell peppers. And I just go down the recipe list because it just helps me remember what I put in last. So you get 2 cups of bell peppers with 1 batch. So you're gonna get 2 for the second batch. And I'm always the person who's like, if there's a little bit left, we're just gonna put the last bit in. This is all that's left, so I'm just gonna put the last bit in. Okay. Onions, 2 cups of onions is for a double batch, 1 cup of onion if you're doing 1 batch. Okay. Jalapenos. So the last batch we did was serrano. Let's go ahead with, the last batch we did was poblano. This is gonna be not enough for serrano, so let's do serrano jalapeno, and we'll just have to remind ourselves that's what it is. One cup if you're doing a single batch. So this one is serrano and jalapeno. And 1 cup of jalapenos. Okay, that batch behind us is warming up. You want to keep an eye on it because overflowing salsa is no fun. This one is going to be tight. I think it'll still be fine though. Okay, so after jalapenos, you're gonna go with garlic. We're gonna do the last bit of this garlic. Okay, then tomato paste. So we're gonna do 2 of these. And then after tomato paste, it's vinegar and salt. So we're gonna go 3 because it's 1.5 per. One cup of vinegar. Ooh, we're getting too close. Okay. Multitasking ended because we can't fit these in. So what I'll do is I'll let this kind of marinate together, and when we empty out that other pot, I guess we'll just add this in there. I still feel good about mixing this though. Okay. This next part goes really fast, so if you're hanging on and you're still watching the video, don't worry, this is the fast part, we're almost done. You're going to use, I would personally, one of these canning ladles. It has a spout on the side, and you're going to go through and fill each of your jars. You're gonna leave room for headspace. That means room for expansion. So this is a little more headspace than needed, so I'm going to put in a smidge more. I'm going to go, okay, and there's one. Okay, now you grab a paper towel with vinegar on it and you wipe the rim clean. If the rim is not clean, food can get in between the seal. So we're gonna clean that. Vinegar helps because we don't want water to sit on there. The vinegar will help it evaporate away. It also helps get anything sticky off. And this is a good time for you to check and make sure that you do not have a cracked or broken rim. Sometimes that happens with glasses, it'll have a crack. If it does have one, then it won't seal properly. Okay, these are your tops. You just hand tighten it. No need to over tighten. If you like to, you can line up the date and the cur with the front of the cur label if you like to see your jar labeling. These go in a rack this size. Take these and put them in the water. Now they'll stay in there for 30 minutes and it cooks it in the pot when you're doing the 20-minute boil, but then it'll cook it also during that 30 minutes. So we'll get the rest of the jars filled up, we'll get them processed, and I'll show you at the end how to see that the jar has sealed properly. Your water needs to cover your jars. When we get done, I'll lift this out, we'll put it on a towel, and I use the practice method where I cover it with a towel to keep the heat in and let it cool to room temperature. During that time, you'll hear the lid snap, and that indicates that it is sealed properly to point where you take the ring off, and you can hold the jar by the seal, and you'll know that it's made contact and it won't release. So when you get some of your jars a little over full, you can just sneak a little bit out and put it in there. So as you can see, you just repeat the process multiple times. So we're gonna clean our jars again. We're gonna put them into our boiling water, and we're going to seal them for 30 minutes. So you're going to water bath them for 30 minutes. We're going to take them out. We're going to place them under the towel, and then they'll rest overnight, and in the morning we'll take the rings off for all the ones that sealed flush. If you see a bubble, that means it didn't seal. It'll actually suck in so that it becomes flush. Okay, so these are clean. And put our lids on them. Again, from here, this is just process. So you're just gonna keep going down this, fill the jar, clean the jar, process the jar. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and you know you've done a good job if you've made a mess of your kitchen, if you have salsa on your shirt from stirring constantly, and if you're just tired. So salsa is really easy to make. It's really good to eat. We love eating this. We regularly have it, and it'll go from this vibrant red color to a darker color, and if that happens, don't worry, that's just the salsa aging. It's best if you let this sit for a couple weeks and then eat it, but you can technically consume this right away. If you do open the jar, make sure you put it in the fridge. By putting the lid back on, you cannot put it back in your pantry. So this is Christina within the garden, and I hope you enjoyed watching me make Bonnie salsa. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video.